We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This is the fourth episode in our season focused on family advocates and the effects of the MMIP, Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Crisis, in the United States. This episode discusses drug use and violence. Listener discretion is advised. This is The Fall Line. In October of 2019, the Auburn Reporter, a Washington state newspaper, ran an article consisting of a few lines. Quote, "A 21-year-old Auburn woman remains missing, and police need help to locate her. Kaylee Mae Nelson-Jerry has not been heard from for some time," Auburn police said. She is Native American, around 5'7", with a slim build, black eyes, and black hair. The newspaper listed contact information for the Auburn police and a case number to reference. That was all the information available. Some time feels approximate because it is. The last time Kaylee's family had seen her was that summer. She didn't have a fixed address. Some reports have called her transient, and her family tells us that's true in the literal sense. She didn't stay in one place, but she had lots of family and plenty of friends and was in regular contact with all of them, until she wasn't. Kaylee grew up on the Muckleshoot Reservation near Auburn, Washington, surrounded by a large, close family who was deeply involved in both the tribe and their church, the Native Shaker Church, also known as the Indian Shaker Church. It's not connected to the Shakers, the denomination you may have heard of in the past, but rather an independent church. Kaylee's grandfather, Frank Sr., and her father, Frank Jr., were both well-known and respected in the area, active in all areas of the community. While she had some upheaval in her early life, her family tells us that she was a happy, loving child, funny, kind, and thoughtful. She kept detailed journals, and she worked out her feelings on paper. We first heard Kaylee's story from our colleague, Carolyn DeFord, the daughter of Leona LeClaire Kinsey, who has been missing from La Grande, Oregon since October 1999. You heard her story in 3 parts on The Fall Line back in 2021. Carolyn, who serves as the Trafficking Project Coordinator at the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, works with families of missing and murdered Indigenous people across the Pacific Northwest on everything from media to resources to legislation. She connected us first with Kaylee's great-aunt Tammy. We also spoke with Kaylee's grandmother Sandy and her aunts Michelle and Janet. You'll hear from all 4 women throughout the episode. Their stories about helping to raise Kaylee are intertwined in their search for her. When Kaylee disappeared in 2019, it took a few weeks to determine that she wasn't in her usual haunts or with her friends. She didn't call or get online or access her per capita payments, her share of the Muckleshoot tribe's net revenue distribution. Her family had been concerned about Kaylee for a few years, since a tragedy had changed the course of her life. But she'd never cut off contact with them, not when she'd struggled with a drug dependence or when she was exploited by people who prey on Native teens and young adults to access their per capita trust funds. But law enforcement told them something that we know that you've heard many, many times before. It's a fact that adults are allowed to go off on their own, even to disappear. Still, by October of 2019, the APD had released the bulletin that we read you and followed up since, looking for community leads. There's been scattered media mentions of Kaylee since then, and a few social media calls for information. Often, when we report on missing people, their families and law enforcement are operating without leads or tips in the investigation. But that's not the case for Kaylee. Though our FOIA was denied due to the open investigation and our requests for comment were unanswered, the Auburn Police Department social media makes it clear that they have received reports of sightings. On March 3, 2020, the official account posted on Facebook that, quote, October 19, 2019, Auburn PD detectives requested the public's help in locating Kaylee. After that post went up, detectives received numerous tips about Kaylee's location. However, none of those tips led to her. They added that, quote, detectives continued to follow up leads as they came in, The investigation continues, and Kaylee's family and the investigating detectives are desperate to find her. The good news is that detectives feel that Kaylee is alive. The problem has been that information as to where she is has been passed on second and third hand. While the public has been incredible about relaying tips about Kaylee, oftentimes the information is passed on too late for detectives to effectively act on. End quote. That post was made nearly 5 years ago, and Kaylee's family tells us that they've received many leads and tips too, often before law enforcement does. That might be because of where and when they've searched. Each time they've received word that she's been seen in various areas of Washington, they've gone searching for her. They've scoured alleys, encampments, underpasses, and spoken to hundreds of people, giving out cigarettes and flyers and hoping that the next tip will be the last one. There's times that they feel that they have gotten close, very close. But so far, they still haven't found the young woman that Kaylee's great-aunt Tammy calls their Songbird. The hope is, by circulating her story in this podcast and sharing her photos more widely via our social media, especially in Washington, they might get the push they need to finally locate Kaylee and help her get back home. When we spoke with Kaylee's family, her Aunt Michelle and her grandmother Sandy started by telling us about her childhood and her relationship with her father, Frank Jr.
Kaylee was always full of positive energy. She was always just happy, loving, and always singing. And she would sing spiritual songs because my mom is the assistant minister for the Shaker Church.
Oh, she was always full of energy. And even as a little tiny baby, she moved around a lot and she recognized people early. And she'd always get happy when you held her and be talking, to her little baby talking and stuff. And as she grew through the years, her dad took care of her and her sister and her little brother. That was before the youngest one was born, and they lived down there by the Muckleshoot Deli. And there was a little hotel or apartment unit there. He used to cook for them, send them off to school, and make sure that he was home when they got home. And always kept his apartment all, nice and neat for them, and always was there. And they were a happy little family. There were just 4 of them because their mother was gone for 2-3 years of their life when they were small. And he stepped in and took care of them. And they got really, really close with their father. He was always a happy-go-lucky dad. And the kids used to love that. They used to love that about him because he'd always be full of positive energy all the time, my son Frank.
Tammy told us that Frank Jr., named for his father, did a great job taking care of the kids. She said he still had energy to play with all the nieces and nephews, too.
Frank was really crazy. He always entertained the kids. And he would make a Donald Duck voice, and he would talk to the kids, and he would laugh and joke with them. And Kaylee was crazy like him. She had the funny bone out of their 4 kids. And I really enjoyed that. I used to like to sit and just kind of watch how the kids interacted with each other. It's one of the things that my kids remember about him is his Donald Duck voice. And, he was always out there playing games with the kids and just interacting with them.
Kaylee's own form of self-expression was music. Every family member we spoke to about Kaylee mentioned the same thing, that she loved to sing. She'd sing while she played, while she cooked, while she did gymnastics. It didn't matter. She was going to serenade whoever was around.
Kaylee, we called her our Songbird. She always sang. Everywhere she'd go, she would sing. Sing, sing, sing all the time. And she'd say, "Watch me. I'm going to sing. I'm going to be up on the stage and you're all going to be watching me." We'd laugh. But she joined choir in school.
Every time I'd pick them up for school, we'd turn on the radio and all of us would be singing on the way down to the Auburn School District. And they like that. They used to always like to have fun on the way to school. And I think that it put them in a good mood for the day.
We told you she was close with her aunts Janet and Michelle. She even lived with Janet off and on whenever her parents were going through hard times. Kaylee was the second oldest, after her sister Cameo, and her aunts recalled that she focused on her schooling and taking care of her younger siblings, even when their lives were less than stable.
I felt she was a really good girl, always interested in gymnastics. She did really well in school. I think she even took choir when she was in high school. So she was into that for a long time. Yeah, and she went through driver's ed and that kind of stuff. So she was really pretty good about her schooling.
She used to always be tutoring and playing the teacher role for her youngest brother because he was the baby that was, the product of her parents getting back together after they'd been separated for about 5 years. And that too was another kind of a traumatic little experience to go from the life that they lived to going back to living with their mom in the picture again. And her younger brother that she tutored, he's endured all of these traumatic experiences, but he is in high school right now. He's 15, on the verge of becoming 16, and he goes to a AAA high school in Auburn. He's managed to pull off all A's with 1 B, keeping himself afloat, keep himself on track for graduation. And I'm super proud of him for that. But that's an example of the kind of thing that she produced, in my opinion. She worked with him all the time on things like that.
I believe that she was like an empath, like she could feel their feelings, and she related to it in ways that, like when she'd come to my house and she'd drop in there to come visit and let me know she was okay, she would always have a backpack that she filled with food, snacks, and different, sandwiches. She'd be in the kitchen cooking up a storm, have the music playing, singing her lungs out because she loved to sing. And so she'd fix up all these snacks, and my husband always was looking at me like, what is she doing? She's cooking up the whole kitchen. I said, I'm just happy to see her here, and I'm glad that she's hungry and I'm able to feed her. But she would pack up her backpack full of things, and she would go out and hand it out to people that were homeless or struggling out there on the streets, and she related to them in ways that I think she just got along with everybody. She had a really good heart. I mean, she had her moments where when she was mad, you knew it because you could see it all over her face, but that was very rare. She was always in really good spirits and always really good to people.
She got that from her father. He was that way. He always helped people too.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
In 2016, Kaylee was 18, and as far as her family knows, things had been going pretty well for her. She had her family and her friends and her hobbies. It was October and her senior year. She had a serious boyfriend and was working toward finishing high school. When she graduated, she'd receive a trust fund from the tribe, earnings held back for her, like every other enrolled Muckleshoot teenager who completed high school or earned a GED. She'd just gotten her driver's license, too. But then, she had a bad day, and a chance meeting that changed everything. Her Aunt Janet told us the story.
So she met this person, and he was supposedly going to give her a ride home because he found her crying in the parking lot. She had gotten into an argument with her boyfriend, and he told her he'd give her a ride back to her parents' house. But instead of doing that, he ended up, and it was the day she got her license, I believe, let her drive his brand new rig, and he was going to take her to Tri-Cities to go introduce her to his friends or his family over there. And for the life of me, I don't know why she would just go, but she must have just been excited to drive a new car. I would assume that's how I was back at that age. And she took off with the guy and ended up rolling a car on the other side of the mountains, about 8 miles this side of Ellensburg, and ended up getting flown by helicopter into Harborview Medical Center and was there for about 6 months.
According to the single news article we found regarding the crash, it occurred on Interstate 90, about 3 miles west of Ellensburg, Washington. That's about 2 hours from Kaylee's home. Per the Daily Record, Kaylee was, quote, driving a 1999 black Honda Passport at around 5:45 a.m. eastbound when it left the roadway on the left side and traveled down an inside shoulder, rolling several times and coming to a rest on its roof. The passenger was identified as a 42-year-old male, and at the time of reporting, it was suspected that Kaylee had fallen asleep at the wheel. She'd just barely learned to drive and would spend the next half year in the hospital. Her Aunt Janet made the trip, about 50 minutes to Seattle, night after night.
I spent at least 4 nights every week out there with her. I would come home from work, not even going to my house. I would just sit in my car and honk the horn to see if anybody wanted to roll with me out to Harborview to go visit her. And we'd go out and do spa nights out there and, wash her hair and take her out and about, walk her out outside to get fresh air and take in the views from downtown Seattle. Because she loved the city. She loved the lights in the city. She did. She was amazing. She's a soldier. She not only did she survive that wreck, but she had a stoma. She had a stoma in her stomach, and she would have to change that thing, and oftentimes take care of it by herself, keep it clean, and do all of that madness. Took good care of that. So she's got a scar, I'm sure, right there in her stomach from that thing. She had a broken left. I'm not sure if it was her wrist or if it was her bone in her arm that was shattered, the lower part, and they have a bar in there in that arm. And then she had the seatbelt syndrome, so she has a scar on the left side of her body on her shoulder, and then she has the corresponding right scar that's down by the hip that goes, for the waistband. She shattered her right ankle, and she had pins and rods in her right ankle, and she just kind of going through times where she was depressed.
Because of the extent of Kaylee's injuries, she was put on painkillers in the hospital and given prescriptions after she left. That's when her dependence on opiates began. It's a story that is familiar to most Americans, so many of us have similar experiences in our own families. That and the isolation of her hospital stay had a tremendous effect on her mental and her physical well-being. Her great-aunt Tammy told us that she noticed a shift in Kaylee's personality, a clear line of before and after the accident.
She was in Harborview for quite a while, and she just wasn't the same anymore. She wasn't like singing anymore. She wasn't as close to people as she was before.
Kaylee always kept journals, and her Aunt Michelle still has one of her niece's diaries from that time. Reading through it, it's clear that even months after the accident, Kaylee was still struggling.
And just from her journal, it sounds like she experienced a lot of pain after the car accident and things, and that had to contributed. She says it in her journals.
So on December 1st, 2016, she wrote, "Today was a 50-50 day, half day and half something. First off, I'd like to say I start school. I am so excited to start. I know this time everything will get done. Day by day, hour by hour, and paper by paper. I even went to breakfast with my dad, which was delicious, but I can't eat as much as I used to, so I didn't finish. Laugh out loud. My stomach has shrunk because of not being able to eat in the hospital for my procedures. Along with the corned beef hash, browns, and eggs, I had hot chocolate to warm me up from the cold weather." And she said, "As busy as my father is, he's been running me around after my car accident. I've been dependent on everyone. Oh my gosh. It's annoying, but I'm the most grateful for my dad taking me here and there and everywhere. So today, Frank, my father, takes me to Auburn so I can get started with the PASS program to finish school. After she left, her phone fell off from her wheelchair, and I blame myself. It's going missing. You know how things balance out of how you do things and how you treat others, how we get karma. Well, I believe in all that extremely. So at the school, I saw a cute heart sweater in the lost and found. Impulsively, I took it. With shame, I say these words. I believe that my karma was my phone going missing. With that being said, I'm going to make this right. I will bring back the sweater to the lost and found. I've now learned a valuable lesson today. And then on December 5th, 2016, she said, yesterday was the worst of the whole time I've been sick. I experienced 18 plus hours of severe back pain. It was the most back pain felt since the beginning of this whole mess, the accident. Not only did I have pain, I couldn't even eat. Everything I ate, drank, came right back up and out my mouth. I was miserable all day. To be continued. But she talks about how she was taking oxycodone for the pain.
Yeah, I just think, the drug problem. I wish I could rewind 10 years before the pills came into our lives. Because I really believe that car wreck was the beginning of her struggles, her hard struggles. But, she's soldiered up and she put up with, she fought. We almost lost her. And she was in there for a long time, but when she got out, she was doing good. She seemed to be doing good and
Graduated, went back to school.
Graduated, went back to school, got her diploma, and she was living at my house. But I tell you that when these tribal kids get those trust funds at 18 years old with that much money and, if they're troubled or they have gone through this or that, then it's just like a key to freedom and free, to do whatever they want and go wherever they want and see and talk to whoever they want, which leaves them subjected to being victimized by people that are, out here to solicit tribal kids for a come up.
This is not a situation unique to the Muckleshoot tribe. Many nations that have revenue trust set aside for young people grapple with how exactly to release the funds to them in the most responsible way. There's no easy solution. That's pointed out in the 2011 First Nations Development Institute paper, Big Money, Structuring Minors Trust Programs for Native Communities. Different nations have developed systems to help young people manage their money, from suggesting financial literacy courses, or like the Muckleshoot tribe, requiring that they graduate high school or get a GED before accessing their funds. Some communities have looked at staggered payments so that young adults don't receive a lump sum. Kaylee's family told us that in their experience, there are plenty of people with an eye out for new graduates with access to funds and who plan to befriend them and then exploit them. That might include introducing them to drugs, physically or emotionally abusing them, or even keeping them from their families. Her aunts Michelle and Janet explain what happened to Kaylee and why she was especially vulnerable after the accident.
So Kaylee graduated in June of 2017, and then she got her trust money, and that's when things kind of went south. People taking advantage of her, giving her drugs, and taking her money, even to a point where they had her debit card and taking out $500 every day because she would ask me to help her, like with her finances, because she felt like I was good at doing that for myself, and if I could help her with hers. And so I was looking into things for her and trying to help her, but those people, were very, I don't know, they kind of had her in their clutches, living right in their home and kind of persuading her that I was, not being honest or that I was making things up. But I had her bank statements and things that she shared with me, and I showed her, this is how much they're taking out every day. And they got her PIN number from her. And so I was explaining to her, there isn't anything that you can do about the money that they're taking from you because you gave them that PIN number. And so you basically authorized them to be able to have that money. But they are taking $500 every single day out of your checking and your savings account. She kind of was off doing her thing with those people.
Well, they would kind of even want to argue with me and my sister and her dad, our brother. We were going to go pick her up to take her somewhere. And when we went there, they took off with her. But we tracked her down to a house up in Bonnie Lake, and the people there were trying to like keep us from her. It's like, we're not here being confrontational about anything. We saw Kaylee come here. That's my brother's daughter, and he wants to see her. And I'd like to be able to talk to her. Is that something that's a problem? I had to go in and talk to the people that live there to, explain that you're being pretty obvious in your attempt to keep her from us. And we know what's going on here, the money situation. And then they allowed her to come outside and be with us. But, eventually they got her back in their clutches again and back out there again because, young kids can't sit still for too long. They got to be out in the world seeing what everyone's up to. And she was a person that loved people, and people totally were taking full-on advantage of her kindness and generosity.
Like my sister Janet was saying, people were taking advantage of her, and that included some family. And one of the guys that supplied drugs to her was a distant cousin of ours, and he kept her there, and Janet and I chased her down and got her away from him.
Her dad was with us that day.
Yeah. He ended up going back and getting her. And we were told that he was very abusive to her.
Kaylee's funds were quickly depleted, and then she was involved in another accident. This time, Janet told us that Kaylee was near a trailer when propane tanks inside exploded, which caused her a concussion. And the totality of her injuries and pain and strain on her mental health just seemed to pile up. Finally, not long before she disappeared, she reached out to her grandmother, Sandy, and to other relatives to ask for a prayer service in the tradition of their church. Janet said that she was hoping for a fresh start for a lot of reasons. One was that she thought that she might be pregnant. The family has not shared this publicly before, but feels it's important to explain where Kaylee was mentally and emotionally in the summer of 2019.
She was trying to get right because of the possibility that she might be becoming a mom. So she, we do that to kind of brush them off and get rid them of their, the dark places that they've been through. And
cleanse their spirit and their soul, their mind. It's like some people put their hands on their arms or brush them off, kind of like a sweeping brush. They pray for them, and they pray really hard for them. And in our religion, we believe that if you pray hard and strong enough, that these bad spirits and bad things will be removed from their body, and that they will get their mind in the right, going in the right direction.
Kaylee's grandmother, Sandy, thinks that they held that prayer service a month or so before she went missing, and it seemed to help. They saw Kaylee afterward and never got a definite answer as to whether or not she was pregnant. They mostly kept tabs on her, especially Janet, whose house she came to often. Even when she didn't have a fixed address, she'd show up to Janet's house to prepare food and to gather supplies for the unhoused. The last time anyone saw her was at Janet's house, on approximately July 1st of 2019. There was no argument between the two. She just encouraged Kaylee to stay with her a little longer. But Kaylee left. Still, though, as Michelle and Janet explained, the family expected to hear from her.
She's always checked in, especially with my sister or my mom. She never went without checking in with anybody.
She's never done that in her life.
And then we reached out to the King County Police here, and like my sister Janet said, they told us that, she probably has made her choice and just doesn't want to be here, and she's an adult, and there's nothing that we can do, just things like that. And Then it came down like months or so later. We reached out again and said, we haven't heard from her. Nobody's seen her.
She hasn't been
And now,
online.
yeah, she wasn't online and she didn't pick up her per capita check. And so that was concerning because kids always could use money, especially her being out on her own.
We know her better than anybody knew her. And I could feel it.
Kaylee's great aunt Tammy says that she became involved in the search in late July, when it became obvious that something was wrong and that her niece was not following her usual patterns of behavior.
Knowing Kaylee when she was just kind of going different places and her mental state at that point, it was like, okay, we just got to start asking people. We got to start looking around, seeing if she's there. And her Auntie Janet was always out looking. She made it her mission to go out and look for her. And if she would see her at some place, or people that she hung out with, she would go and she would say, hey, you know where Kaylee's at? Or if somebody would give her a tip, she would go and she would try to go look for her. And it became consuming for Janet, to the point where the rest of us got worried about Janet because she made this like her mission. Janet would move mountains for her family.
Janet explained that while they filed a missing persons report with the Auburn Police Department and also liaised with an appointed MMIWP detective retained separately by the Muckleshoot Tribe, she feels that from the beginning, her family organized the search efforts themselves.
I knew when she wasn't coming back. And then we started hitting the streets looking for her. Traveling from town to town, locally and across the mountain and down towards the ocean. And in the beginning, we were getting all hit up by all these people online, people looking to jump on the bandwagon and calling my number, saying that they kidnapped her and wanted ransom money. But, it was a part of this ploy that's out there. People trying to scam others in the moments of weakness, I would assume. I've met with the Auburn police detective and went down and met with them in their office downtown. Another detective that I never heard back from ever since the time. The detective that MMIW Monies is sponsoring, working for our tribe, has been out here for 2 years now. They mentioned that they were talking about possibly putting her picture on the sides of metro buses, but that never happened. They talked about billboards that I brought up. That never happened.
Whatever signs and things is what we created. I made signs and my brother-in-law Jay posts them and Janet's made signs.
One result of the dozens of searches is that family has personally followed up on tips, sometimes in real time, on the streets of Tacoma and Seattle. Tammy and Janet both told us that they've run into plenty of people who say that they recognize Kaylee, and some who even claim to have interacted with her personally.
My son and I went over to Spokane because we were told she was seen over there. We made flyers. We drove over there. And we walked the streets of Spokane, putting those flyers up. And boy, did I have my eyes open. You had to walk through people smoking drugs, homeless, everywhere. And we went to the area where she was supposedly seen. Well, during the day, a girl told me, she goes, that girl right there stole my phone. And I looked at her and I said, if you could help me find her, I'll buy you a brand new phone and I'll put minutes on there for you. But you have to help me to find her. And she just kind of looked at me and turned away. So my son and I started walking away. And I could hear somebody whistling, but I just kept walking. And my son goes, hey, Mom, stop. So I stopped and he goes, that girl wants to talk to you. So I walked back to where she was and she goes, if you really want to find her, you come here and you go on that street right over there. She'll be there. And I said, okay. I said, if I find her, I said, I'll come here tomorrow and you meet me here tomorrow and I'll bring you to go get that phone. And we walked around and hung up these flyers. And one of the men, and I don't know what kind of business it was kind of like a medical clinic type thing. And he goes, "Hey, could I see that?" I said, "Sure." I said, "I was just going to ask you if we could hang one of the flyers up here on your window." And he goes, "I've seen her. I've seen her." And I said, "Well, if you see her again," I said, "would you please call this information in?" And we seen a couple of police officers that evening that said that they seen her.
When was this?
It was during the summertime we went over there this year. And my dad lives over on the Spokane Reservation, so we go over there. Anytime we go to the Spokane area, I drive around where they said that she was seen. I'm hoping that, it is, that she's there. But I know if she's there, I don't think that she would stay away from us.
We went out and we did our own, pounding the streets with posters and handing them out to people in the downtown areas and Tacoma, and camping out there and plotting around and, going through the woods and through the homeless camps ourselves, putting ourselves at risk being out there because it's dangerous out there. But going through camps, looking for her, handing out information, talking to people, telling them about her. Went to Spokane, went down to Aberdeen because supposedly there's a Walmart in Aberdeen that people think that she still to this day shows up at randomly in the evening hours to a shop. We've never seen or heard anything that's given us solid proof that she's down there. Just like in Spokane, I went with my family, my aunt, uncle, and a couple of boys that we take care of, and we went to Spokane and we were out investigating everywhere, feeding the homeless, cooking fried bread at my grandma's house, carting it into the city, getting donations from KFC for butter and honey, and trading cigarettes to people for information. And I felt like that was one of the places that I felt like we were really on her heels.
One of the most hopeful leads that the family has received was a photo that was sent to them a few years back of a young woman who looked just like Kaylee. It was convincing enough that Janet headed straight to Seattle, where the photo was taken, to try and track that young woman down. And she was successful. But, as Sandy explained, they were left at another confusing dead end.
They sent my daughter Janet a picture of this gal that was supposedly Kaylee, and everybody got all happy and everything that day, and she went over there and the girls had her back to her, and when she turned, it was really heartbreaking to know that she went all the way over there and with good hopes that it was going to be her, and it wasn't. And that kind of thing had happened to all of our family for the last 6 years.
In the time since Kaylee's disappearance, her father, Frank Jr., passed away under circumstances that the family still has questions about. His personality had already undergone a seismic shift. Sandy and Tammy believe it was due to the pain of not knowing about what had happened to his daughter.
Before my son died, I believe he had a broken heart right from the beginning, and it never got any better. And I feel like there could have been some kind of counseling. He'd get home late at night from doing odd jobs and stuff, and he would take his vehicle out and drive the streets looking for his daughter. Always trying to find out different things about her.
He wasn't happy. He wasn't the Donald Duck that would make the kids laugh. It started changing him, not knowing where she was at. He just got really somber.
Frank's loss, he died in March of 2024, had a profound effect on the entire family, and on Kaylee's siblings too. Tammy says that's when she stepped in to help with advocacy, as well as search efforts for Kaylee.
Every day, my sister Sandy, she calls me, but all the time she's putting things out on Facebook, how much she misses her son, how she wished she could have been there with him, missing him so much, and goes on to Kaylee's page of, how much she misses her. And it has really put a big, heavy weight on my sister. It's been really traumatizing for them because with her being gone, nobody in the tribe really trying to help us, then her dad dying, it just kind of threw everybody overboard. And that's where my sister asked me to start, Tammy, could you do this? And it's something I'm always going to do. I'm always going to try to be there to help my sister, help my nieces. And it's a struggle for them. It's a hard struggle. It's like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? And it's something that we deal with every day. It's like, who can we go to? Where can we go? You have all these flyers up, but do people really take it serious, or they just kind of glance at it and walk on by? Is she going to be forgotten forever from other people other than our family? When her birthday comes around, it's just kind of like a somber time. Not knowing is really, really, really difficult. And I think that just stays in the back of all of our minds all the time, because you'll see things, or you'll do something, or you'll go a place and she pops up. You think about her and you think, I wonder if I'm ever going to see her again. And then you have people say, oh, she don't want to come back. And I just kind of look at him and I think, she would contact somebody here. I don't think that she would not contact us.
There's some reason to believe that if Kaylee is out there in Tacoma or Seattle or some other area of Washington, she may be unable to contact her family. She has experienced drug-induced psychosis in the past and has been exploited by older, opportunistic individuals who seek out vulnerable young adults. That's why it's so important to say something if you see her. You don't know what kind of situation she might be in, or if she has the ability to leave. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, and especially in Washington, we're asking you to share Kaylee's missing persons flyer across your social media platforms. It's available on our episode page and on our social media. Her family has been willing to chase down any tip, no matter how small, for nearly 6 years. So don't hesitate because you're unsure or because you think your information might not be important. They need any lead. Kaylee Mae Nelson-Jerry disappeared in July of 2019. Today, she would be 26 years old. At the time she went missing, she was approximately 5'7" and 135 pounds. Kaylee is described as a Native American female with black hair and brown eyes. Kaylee has a number of scars from a serious car accident. If you have information regarding the disappearance of Kaylee Mae Nelson-Jerry, please contact the Auburn Police Department tip line at 253-288-7403. Next time on the Fall Line, the family of Vandry Old Person, who was found deceased on the Blackfeet Nation Reservation, has been fighting to see her case reopened. If you know of a case that should be covered on the Fall Line, there's a link to our case submission form in the show notes. Thank you for listening. The Fall Line is an independent podcast, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA, pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. If you try out the products we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And please take a moment to rate and review our show in your podcast app of choice. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to check your subscription to make sure you're set for automatic downloads so that you don't miss an episode. My book, Lay Them to Rest, which covers years of my life working on a Jane Doe case, is out everywhere now. It's a hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. You can order it anywhere you get your books and through your local library. Find out more in the link in our show notes. And if you'd like to support the show and the stories we cover, join us on Patreon or Apple Premium. 100% of our Patreon and Apple Premium earnings are supporting our Family Therapy Fund and actively paying for therapy for families who appeared on the show. On Patreon, you can get early release, ad-free versions of our regular episodes for $5 a month. If you prefer Apple Premium, you can subscribe there as well. On Patreon, we also post occasional giveaways, updates, and blogs, which all patrons can enjoy, starting at just $1. The Fall Line is written, hosted, and researched by Laura Norton, with additional research assistance by Melissa Gold, interviews by Brooke Hargrove, produced, engineered, and scored by Maura Curry, content advisement by Vic Kennedy and Brandy C. Williams. Special thanks to Liz Lipka.